This week's conversation with Annette Boland of the Woolen Needle is sponsored by the Embroiderers Guild of America. Becoming a member of the EGA opens the door to a long list of events. The biggest is the National Seminar. This year, it's Preserving Needle Art, August 14 to 18 in Atlanta. Registration for classes is closed, but you can still attend the event, and pop-up shopping and the exhibit hall are free to the public without registration. The National Seminar isn't always something members can attend, but that doesn't mean you miss out. We are about to enter the season of regional seminars, and for most, those events can be attended by driving. Just about every EGA region hosts an annual event. The Pacific Region event is July 19 to 25, the Carolinas region, October 3 to 6, Metropolitan region, April 26 and 27 in 2025, and the Heartland region, May 1 to 4 in 2025. As a member, every time you visit the EGA site, be sure to click on the events page to keep up to date with the many events on the calendar. Throughout the year, there will undoubtedly be one that you can attend. Not yet a member? Join today at egausa.org. Thanks to the EGA for sponsoring this week's show, and now our conversation with the talented Annette Boland of the Woolen Needle. Welcome back. I'm Gary Parr.
And I'm Beth Ellicott.
And you are listening to Fiber Talk, the twice-weekly podcast for needlework artists. Our artist this week, Annette Boland from the Woolen Needle. Annette, welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Oh, okay. Beth and I were before we called you into the room here. We were firing off questions at each other about wool. So we'll learn about the woolen. We'll learn about the Woolen Needle later. We got to learn about wool right now.
Sure.
All right. So the question. Well, Beth, you had the question. Yeah.
Well, and my question is it hard to find good quality wool?
It's becoming more of a challenge. Our distributors that we've had over the last 18 years, I've lost one very good resource, and what is available at the ones that are still viable and still running, it's getting limited to what's available in them. Quantity has really dropped. Don't know why, but it is.
Oh, so you don't have a clue as to why? Because to me is interesting because it seems like wool applique is becoming more popular.
Exactly. It's really blossomed. There's a lot more shops that I supply wool to. Sometimes I have to hoard a little bit of it and say, because I can't, I know I can't replace it. It's like the cotton world. When it's gone, it's gone. Before you could maybe see it come back around a year later or a couple years later, but that isn't happening anymore. So, but there is a big push on wool applique now. It's been introduced and it's really taken off.
Do you know why? Why do you think wool applique is kind of taking off now?
Well, it was the force behind this shop when it opened in 2006, the wool from the rug hookers and things like that. And I like to do needle turn applique, but the dimension it brings to use wool applique versus cotton applique, it just brings a whole new element into your design. The depth of the colors, the depth of the textures. It just opened up another avenue of bringing some detail to your designs. And that might be it. It's easy to do. You stitch through cotton and you have some resistance on your needle when you're stitching cotton to cotton. When you stitch through wool, you're stitching in butter because it's just so soft.
Yeah, it feels good in your hand.
It does.
One thing I like about doing wool applique is that you just start stitching and it just kind of, for me, it just relaxes me. You're holding it, the feel in your hands, the pull of the needle through the fabric. It's just nice. But
yeah, I think it's a therapy thing. We live in a world of fast pace. We're running to our grandkids' events and everybody's just on the run all the time. But when you sit down with a needle, whether it be wool, whether it be cotton, you just get to relax and you get to slow down. And I think, it's a therapy thing for all of us.
Right. So back to the wool, though, so this isn't just from the dreaded pandemic that it slowed that down, or was that a contributing factor, do you think?
That's a good question. I think it's availability of product, and the pandemic probably did have a lot to do with it, I would say. But I think it's a product thing. They just can't get it. You can't get the mills aren't running anymore. Probably labor. There's just probably so many factors involved.
We talked to a lady in Ireland, many months ago, who I don't, what was she? She was weaving wool. I'm not sure what she was doing. I forget, but she was dyeing. She was doing all things, but she was taking in raw wool from and the mill was the choke point for her, and that was in Ireland because there was only one. There's plenty of sheep, but getting a mill was the problem. And so that's the same thing for you. So it goes all the way back to the source. Then there's sheep, but getting it to your hands, there's choke points in there that make it problematic.
I think you're very right, Gary, because you're right. There's plenty of sheep, and we do have, I don't have, but there are many people that are spinning their own, yarns and things anymore. They're going back to the basics, but it's the mills. There's just no mills running. They're probably not feasible. Would be my guess.
Yeah, because you look at knitting. I mean, knitting. No matter what the economy or the environment, knitting just seems to cook along. That and quilting both. They just seem resistant to anything. And you would think that there would just be this constant demand for wool yarn that would at least make one or two mills profitable, but apparently not.
I have a mill within 22 miles of me. And at one time when they were transitioning, I went and spoke with them and about weaving the finer weighted wools. And they weren't interested, but it's like, man, we could sell thousands and thousands of yards of this wool. So it obviously wasn't feasible for them either when they checked into it. So they continue to weave the looser weaves, the one mill that they still have operating. But I can't give you an explanation. Wish I could.
That's frustrating because I mean, it's. You'd think something like that, a renewable resource. I mean, sheep grow hair all day long, that getting a hold of it should not be a problem. But that's frustrating.
I have a friend who has sheep, and she says, she bought sheep so she could have wool, but she says she can't get rid of the wool. It's nice, it's good wool, but she doesn't spin or anything like that. She thought she'd have a market for it, and she doesn't. And that's very frustrating for her. And I'm sure she's one of many who have, because there's sheep all around where I am. I'm in the country. But there's no market for it, I guess. Just weird.
Frustrating. All right. So then the next thing about wool, what makes a quality wool? Because the pictures you sent with all the pieces of wool, beautiful on shelves, it makes you just want to drool. When it comes to a quality wool, if I want good wool, either yarn or cloth, compared to what I'd get, say, at Joann's or something, what is the difference? Is it the original fibers, the way they're processed? What makes a good high-end wool stand out?
The wools I have in the shop here usually range between 12 to 13.5 ounces a yard, which is a nice weight. You can get some heavier wools, but for what we do, then you get into the more of a coat weight wool. But you're definitely looking for 100% wool. Now they're blending some nylons in with it. There's a place for it. You get into the Angoras and the cashmere and that type going in with the wool. That makes it a softer, drapier wool. I don't use it so much because it gets more costly. Mm-hmm. Just 100% wool is the best. And, I suppose how they process could affect it, but I've never had any issues. I've done some testing with some of the things that I get on a door mill, and everything 100% works great. It's just the weights of the wool, and most things are very fine gauged weaves. You can get looser weaves. They're not as useful to us, but 100% is the best.
Okay, so for best wool applique that she just did, I mean, I got to say I got all fired up about that. I think it's so cool. But so for that kind of thing, as needle workers, then when we go to a shop or evaluate wool, then we want 100% wool, no other fibers involved, and then it's a weight per yard that we go by?
No, most shops will sell it by size. A lot of people will do like the fat eighth, fat quarter, half yard, whole yards. A lot of my shops that I distribute or that I sell to, they will put them into bundles. Like I think I sent you a picture with bundles of different pieces together. And because you get the minimum size that we do in here is a 5 by 5 inch piece. And then we go to a 10 by 10 and then a eighth of a yard. Because some pieces or certain colors, you may only need a 2 by 2 piece. So when we go into that range, when we do all of our kitting within the shop, then our scraps go into bins and then we sell it by weight. So then, I always say it's just like buying cheese. You pay so much per pound. And, that way they can have so much variety for small quantities. And I'm seeing the last probably 8 to 10 months, I have more and more scrap wool shoppers than I do quantity shoppers. Because, you just don't need a lot of any one color. So unless you're on the opposite end of it and doing rug hooking, and then you need quantity. And so we have that available also.
Yeah.
So is that a different weight of wool to do rug hooking?
Nope, it's all the same. Some of the wools I'm getting in now are called a heavier weight, and those you don't have to felt if you're rug hooking or if you're rug punching. Those are two techniques that you're making rugs to put on the floor, and you don't have to felt the wool because it's thicker and it's already has the density that if you've taken a finer piece of wool, a thinner weight wool, once you felt it, it will felt up and be like that tighter weave. So it gives them the option to not have to felt it. But like in the wool applique world, I want to be able to throw my quilt that I made with wool applique in the washer and dryer because it's already been processed. It's already been washed. It's been dried a couple of times. And then it's safe. Back in the day when we made wool clothing, you didn't dream of putting anything wool through the washer or dryer because it would destroy it. So, and I say 100% wool is the best. It is, but sometimes you will use that piece with a little bit of nylon in it just because you love the texture, you love the color. It gives you something that you can't get with just 100% wool. So nylon does throw some design into the wools that you can't get with 100% wool sometimes, but it's whether we're a wool snob or not, I guess.
Well, that's okay. That's all right. Yeah, as a kid, I was being helpful one day with a wool sweater, and it went from adult size to kid size in a hurry. Yeah, I was not popular. Oops. So then it sounds to me like we can collect wool and wool thread just like we collect any other thread or linen or whatever it is, and just have because the pictures you sent of those little bundles of wool, it was like, send me one of each, please. Yeah.
Yeah. It's very addicting. I do have a few wool bundles myself, and I don't do that much wool applique, but the colors that you can get with wool are beautiful. I think it takes the dye different than like a linen or a cotton. It seems to be richer.
Yeah, so, I think it just brings depth, and I think it's because you're right. You can get richer, deeper colors with it.
Yeah. Now, among the 8,000 things you do there at the Wool and Needle, dyeing wool, is that the foundation of the business?
No,
No?
actually the designs, because we pretty much self-design what we sell in here. I carry a few other designers' patterns, but we're unique to the fact that when we find a piece of wool and we really love it, and it's like, oh, what should we make out of this? We will design something around that color or the colors that coordinate together. So we're unique, and that's probably the drive for the Woolen Needle, that and our reproduction cottons. We stay very true to those two aspects, wool and reproduction cottons, and original designs.
Yeah. Oh boy. All right. So, dumb guy question then. What do you mean by reproduction cottons? What are you doing there?
They are fabrics that have been designed based off of old antique quilts or old antique fabrics. Okay. Bringing in old looks, to keep those designs alive.
Oh, okay. And then I spotted that set of 9 balls of pearl cotton. Oh.
Yes, those were during the pandemic. We've always designed with Valdani threads and love them. They come out of Romania. During the pandemic, all that was shut down because the country was shut down. So we couldn't get our threads to design with. So I found a new avenue, which was the Wonderfil Eleganza threads. And they were geared towards the brights, the contemporary colors, everything like that. So they came to me and they said, well, because I was searching out for darker colors, more primitive colors. And so then working with the company, we developed those 9 threads to get some deeper, darker colors that worked with the wools that we use here and the fabrics we use here. We're hoping to expand that, but it's a time crunch thing. Yeah. Never enough hours in the day.
Yeah.
So they're exclusive to the Woolen Needle, those 9 balls.
Yeah, those colors are so much fun to work with. It's Wonderfil, right? Elegant,
yes.
and they are just because the variegation's short. So when you're doing something like the wool applique, it's not, you don't have a super long run, so it changes while you work a petal, which was so much fun when I was working on the wool applique piece.
Yeah, the color changes much more rapidly, and the colors, if I order the same color 4 or 6 months down the road, it's going to be the same. It's very true to their colors. I don't get that variegation or that variance that I did as much with the other company. And they needle nicer. They're twisted an extra time. They're gassed an extra time. So you don't have the breakage. You don't have the lint buildup. So they have some good qualities about it.
Ooh, just the lint buildup enough is that's a big enough deal. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. Well, that package of 9. What do you call them? What's your name for them?
Well, it's just the Woolen Needle Primitive Collection.
Primitive Collection. Yeah.
Yep.
That's a beautiful combination of colors, and I'm not even a fan of variegated threads at all. And yeah. Yep. And take us back to the beginning of the Woolen Needle here. Let's get a little history behind this. So it started with, was it Mary Blythe? Tell us the story of how the Woolen Needle got started.
Well, Mary, a good friend, took a number of her girlfriends on a trip when we were in, I think we went to Williamsburg, Virginia. And we were on a rug hooking retreat where Mary had taught us all how to rug hook. So she's the one that kind of poked the bear and got us all addicted to working with wool. And on the way back, Mary is an amazing designer, and she had the dream of having a shop, a rug hooking shop. And so on coming home, we were talking, and I thought, well, we probably need some quilting involved with the shop also to make it work, because I didn't know if there was enough rug hookers in Iowa County, Iowa, to make that happen. So, we're a community of 3,200 people. Yeah. So we tied the quilting into the business also as she was building the business. So once the shop opened, she was the designer. We would help write the patterns. Another girlfriend and I would help write the patterns and do things like that. And it took off. We never dreamed it would take off the way it did. Being close to the interstate, 2 miles from the interstate, of course, that would let travelers get to us very easily. So it jump-started as a success right away. Mary was in the business then. At the end of 2011, the other employee and I bought Mary out because she had other ideas of what she was going to do and taken her life in a little different direction. So we purchased the business from her at that point. Not a lot changed. We expanded because the shop was pretty tiny at that time. Still reproduction fabrics, wool, rug hooking, wool applique, those type of things that we had in here. So in 2012, the other business partner and I, we expanded and added some space and started doing more social media, things like that. And that friend Carla was with me as a partner till the end of 2019. And in January, of course, the pandemic had hit, and it's like, wow, did she get out at the right time? So it was a challenge in 20 because, of course, the pandemic shut everybody down. My employees, we all kept working, we kept sending stuff, but we knew we had to hit the social media market. And so it was a good thing for me because I am not a social media person. I'm not somebody who likes to be in front of people. Carla was always the teacher every time, or the speaker when we would go anywhere, because that was her forte. She was a school teacher. So it pushed me to have to step into that role, but the social media really helped me keep us going in 20. Like I say, the staff stayed with me, and we just filled orders, and then we just kept pushing and pushing to fill orders, and we survived the pandemic, and we've just kept it going ever since. And then like I said, in 2019 was the end of when Carla moved on, and so I've been the sole owner since then. And going back to the beginning in 2006, when we talked about opening the shop to begin with, Mary and had asked us to help. We said, yeah, we'll all commit 10 years. So this year is 18 for me. Still love it. It's not like going to work ever for me. It's just my love and my passion, and I just enjoy it so much. So we're still here plugging away, thinking of new ways all the time to keep in front of people without being too forceful on them. I don't want to be that person. But it's fun. We're a destination shop. We have people come from all over the world here. We ship all over the world, which blows my mind. I spoke with a lady once she placed an order from France for 2 yards of fabric. Huh. And so I emailed her and I said, just my curiosity, why would you order cotton from Little Williamsburg, Iowa, and have it shipped clear to France? Because shipping is quite expensive when you ship overseas. And she says, well, I can pay the shipping and I can get that 2 yards here cheaper than I can buy it in France. So I never ask anybody again. Oh. I never dreamed that they had that kind of tariffs and things like that when anything goes over there. So, I just accept it, and glad when I get an order in that goes over there.
Yeah.
So.
Wow. Yeah, we're so spoiled here. We don't realize it.
Oh, yes, we very much are so.
Yeah. All right, so quilting, rug hooking, dyed wool, punch needle, wool applique. Yeah, I mean that's a broad spectrum of things. Does one dominate, or are you keeping all the balls in the air all the time?
They're always in the air.
Okay.
The staff will say, come on, Annette, we need to design some wool appliques. So I'll start working on some wool applique and get some more new designs out. And then before I'm done with those, they're telling me, we need to get a new quilt out. So the staff keeps poking the bear and pushing me, which is wonderful. I love the pressure. I love designing. It's just, you just never know what's going to work, what's not going to work. But staff does all of the dyeing at this point because I just don't have the time. So I have a wonderful gal that does all the dyeing, and she's fabulous at it. Thank goodness. So we just a little bit of everything all the time.
Boy.
Right. So I remember you saying you do pre-shrink all that wool that you have in your kits and in your shop, it's been shrunk down. So I don't have to worry about it if I take my little pouch and decide, oh, I spilled something on it and I need to wash it. Correct?
Correct. When the wool comes in, because a yard measurement is a good size, largest size to work with. So as the wool comes in, all of our basic colors, our neutrals, and all those colors that we do our dyeing on, we cut that into 1 yard pieces. So then we wash it and we dry it. Now it is considered felted because it has shrunk the fibers up, tightened the fibers, and it's ready to use. But if it's going to get dyed, then it gets soaked again with a product to open up the fibers. Then it gets put in a pot with dye, and it's cooked until the dye is all absorbed and the dyes are set into that pot. I mean, it sets it into the wool, and then it's gone back through the washer and back through the dryer again. So it is very much prepared, ready for you to use. Now, not all shops do that, but anything that comes through here, it's been felted and is ready to use. And like you say, Beth, then you can wash and dry that product when you're done with it. I still would be cautious of putting it in a hot dryer. I only wash it, dry it. Either if it's large, I might let it hang or dry flat, or put it in a low heat dryer and dry it, and they come out like they're brand new again.
And that surprised me, because I know we were discussing it at the workshop. Someone said, "Can I wash my piece?" And I was like, "I don't think you're going to wash wool." And you came and you said, "No, you can wash these." And I was like, "Wow, that's amazing."
Yeah, I had a piece the other day it was an old piece that I had done, and it was a different technique how the back was put on, and it was a kit I bought from someone else. And it was getting, like if you don't fuse the back to the front, it can get a little wobbly or bubbly. And so I threw it in the washer and dryer, and it tightened it up, and it looked better than it did when it went in. So I was thankful.
So, and the reproduction fabric, that still is very popular, the quilting fabric? I didn't realize people were still, I mean, I remember going to quilt shows and seeing like Civil War era, reproductions.
Yes, so there still is a large following for reproduction fabrics. Sadly, thankfully, that probably helps with my success for the business. Sadly, you have a sales rep comes in 4 times a year, any of them, and they may have, out of the 30 to 70 lines they show you, they might have 1 or 2 reproduction lines. So it's very limited what's available and what's out there. A few designers, most recently with one of the companies, has started adding some more, or they design as reproduction fabrics also. So there's people doing it, but the original designers we're all aging out of some of this process. Some of those designers are weaning themselves out of designing fabrics anymore. So we don't have the varieties that we used to have, but there is a huge demand yet for reproduction fabrics. And the sales companies or the fabric companies are missing the boat by not having more available. I don't get it, but can't outthink them.
That whole thing concerns me because so many designers, I don't care what the needle art technique is, the vast majority are nearing the point where if they aren't thinking about retirement, it's right around the corner. And I'm not convinced that we have enough young people coming along with these techniques to fill the void. It's just concerning.
I agree, Gary. It's very concerning. I had classes with young kids. The thing is, my children were taught how to sew. And the seed's planted. They know how to do it. But there's so many children in the schools, the junior highs, the high school, the elementaries now, their parents, their mother, their father doesn't know how to sew because they were not taught. So we've missed that generation. We kind of skipped that generation of teaching how to sew. And now to get the younger ones to do it, when they have ball games 5 nights a week,
yeah.
they're too busy. So we've been just kicking around here recently about starting some more classes up for the youngers, because even in the 4-H world, I have a granddaughter that's in 4-H, and we do a sewing project, or I help teach her something in the sewing industry every year that we can. And there's just so few things when you go to the state fairs anymore that are sewn by the 4-H kids. So It worries me where it's going to go, but
yeah, no,
hopefully we'll get them taught.
Yeah, you look at it. I mean, the home ec programs and wood shop and all those removed from the schools, and Girl Scouts used to be a source, and that's not what it once was. And 4-H and those kinds of things, I'm sure, are not near the participation that they used to have. And these kids miss out, and and then you think, well, okay, then I can just have a tailor or somebody else do it. Well, all those people are getting older too. At some point, who's going to sew this stuff? It can't be robots and machines. It just can't.
I used to run I just went blank. Alteration. I used to do alterations for people, and I'd have people that I felt bad, charge them $10 to sew on a button because they couldn't sew on a button. It made me sad.
Yeah.
Made me sad for them, but it's, and clothing is a different world though too. You think about it. You could go and make your clothes and make quality clothes less than you could buy them. That's not the case anymore. Everything's a throwaway world. We're in a throwaway world.
Yeah.
You can buy things cheaply, so you don't make them. You don't make the heavy quality clothes that you used to make.
But there is I noticed a shift. My daughter is 24, and she's very much into thrifting. A lot of her friends are too, and they're starting to want to alter those clothes. Now, I have to admit, I never really learned to sew clothing, so I remember when she was a teenager and she wanted to alter clothing, she goes, well, do you mind if I use the sewing machine? I said, as long as you don't break it, I don't care. And she would alter, she just kept trying until she got it to a point where she liked how it fit. But she's never taken a formal class, of how to do your own clothing to make it fit you correctly. But there is I think a growing interest in that, to alter clothes, to sew your own things, the desire, the realization that fast fashion isn't working, I guess. So
I think you're probably right, Beth. Hopefully they'll, what do you do?
Yeah.
And how do you get them, how do you get them to take the classes, or,
right.
who's there to teach them too? There's not I don't even know a resource for that.
Correct.
There's got to be something, but anyway.
Yeah, we need to put those basics back in our school systems.
Yeah. Well, see, Beth, that hits exactly the point I was trying to make, is the people that can teach it, they're old and tired, and they don't want to do it anymore. And, and like Annette said, there's a gap there. How do you,
right.
I don't know how you fill that. That's a tough one. Yeah. And it isn't just needle and thread. It's in virtually anything, industry, wherever. There is a tremendous gap there that is just difficult to fill. Yeah. I don't know. Annette, take us through your design process. You're designing for different, quilts or rugs or punch needle or wool applique. Do you start with a collection? I mean, I'm sure you're like most artists. You have designs in your head all the time, or on paper, or a sketchbook. Do you then look at those and say, oh, this one's a wool applique, this one's a quilt? Or do you sit down and say, I need a quilt, so I'm going to put that together?
I'm always on the look for design elements. One of the funniest places that I found some design elements was a rest area along the interstate. And I walked in, and it was one of the newer ones that they had remodeled. And it's like, oh, wow, look at this floor. So I started taking pictures of the tiles on the floor. It just had a fun design in it. And then on the outside of the building, there was some concrete work that had some fun elements in it. So I'm always snapping pictures just to keep those in my head and so I can bring them back into my mind. Typically it is like a fabric line. When I see a fabric line, I have to look at it a little bit and then it'll just come to me what needs to be made out of it. You know, if it's a line that I know I can use all 28 pieces within a quilt and make it all tie together and look well, that's just a matter of picking which block is going to complement the fabrics that are in that line the best. So it's kind of like the fabrics talk to me and tell me where to start, even more so with the wool. Some wools, you know, it's a loose weave or it would be a good flower bloom, but it wouldn't be a good animal. You know, it's kind of weird. So then I'll just start doodling. I always have a doodle pad in my bag when I travel, whenever I go anywhere, and I'll doodle little designs. I'll be sitting in the hospital with someone as they're recovering and be doodling designs. And then it's just making them come to fruition. So then I'll just start cutting out, drawing the shapes, cutting out the shapes. If it's a quilt, I'll start cutting it out, laying it together, making sure the block works. The worst part of the whole design process is writing the pattern because I know what I did and I know how I did it, but getting that translated onto paper sometimes is hard so other people can understand it. I always try to assume whoever's reading the pattern knows nothing. So maybe my patterns seem simplistic to some people, some advanced sewers, but I want anybody to be able to pick it up and make it come to fruition so that it works. I don't want them to struggle and have trouble with it because that takes the fun out of it. And once you put it away in the closet, you're not going to get it back out. And I want people to be successful and enjoy it as much as I did.
Yeah. How many designs would we have if designers didn't have to write instructions? Yeah. Yeah. Truckloads. Yep. Yeah. So the fabric speaks to you, but at some point you have to say, all right, this is going to be a wool applique design. Does that speak to you too? You just inherently know which way to go with it?
Well, kind of. Even any quilts I do, I try to implement wool applique into it because wool, it's just makes everything. It just brings design elements that are fun into the quilts. And then you have some wools that sit here for a while and you think, okay, what can we do with that? So we might dye it, make it a different color, and then it'll sell. And it's ironic. You can have fabrics out on the shelves and on the walls, but if you put 3 or 4 bolts on the corner of your work table and anybody comes in, they'll buy them. Oh. It's weird. So evidently those fabrics at that day spoke to those people to walk through the door. You just don't know what people are looking for and things like that. But with the design part of it, when you see it, you just kind of know what it needs to be.
So do you have an art background?
Oh, no. Although, I started sewing at a young age. My mother, we were a large family. I have 5 sisters and 2 brothers. And as we were growing up, my mother made all of our clothes and we had fancy little dresses and things. And I remember sitting at her feet and watching her sew. And so I just always had that love to create things. And one of my first quilts, it was a tied quilt. So if that qualifies as a quilt, it was pieced and then I was tying it and I was at my folks and I said to my dad one day, I was a farm girl and very much a tomboy, but I did love my hobbies of crafting and doing things like that. And I said, what in the world am I doing? I'm never going to get this done. He said, you always have to have something in your hands doing something. So I believed him and I stuck with it. I guess I always am stitching. We travel and I'm stitching. No matter what I do, I'm stitching. But no art background. I guess I'm just creative.
Yeah, it's interesting because you're not the first one who said that. But then to look at your work, I'd call you a liar because it's. The proportions. I mean, everything is just so nicely done. And I'll say it again. I'm fired up. That piece that you guys did, Beth, that you did, it's just so cool. I mean, I got to try this technique because it looks like it's fun to do, and on the, maybe on the easy side, I'm sure it can get complex, but the result you got out of that, Beth, is just so neat.
Yeah, I think it's the stitching. I think you can, because you incorporate kind of quilt making when you piece things down. But my love is stitching, and that's what I like about the wool applique.
Beth, do you find it relaxing when you just sit and stitch and you can just stitch?
Yes, yeah, and the one thing I've got to admit I don't like about the wool applique is cutting the little pieces out, and I find that fussy. I just don't like to cut things.
Sure.
But once it's ironed on and that wool is all down, you got your design down, and you can just sit there and say, well, I can add French knots here. Oh, maybe I'll do a buttonhole stitch here, or I'll add do a bullion knot, or do a bullion knot that's a loop. I don't know what that's called. Or you could, what can I add to make this more my own, or add more texture to it? That's what I love about the wool applique. You can keep it really simple. I know a lot of people who just do a buttonhole around their pieces, and they're just happy with how that looks. And every time I see their pieces, I'm like, okay, can I have that? I want to add French knots. I want to add a little more to it. But it both looks beautiful. I mean, you can keep it very, very simple, or you can embellish it to your heart's content.
I think, that concept of adding more stitches is the same concept and parallels the quilting world. You can overquilt a quilt in my eyes. Sometimes you need to let the fabric do the design. Sometimes if you have blank blocks, let the quilting do the design, whereas adding more stitches to wool applique adds to the design. So I think they parallel each other, the quantity of how much stitching or the quantity of how much quilting. It's a nice balance. And yes, some people like it more simplistic. Some people like it more textured with more threads, more stitching done on it. When I teach a class of wool applique, I revert back, because my process is you trace your shapes, which are in their patterns, onto a fusible web, and then you cut loosely around that, you fuse it to your wool, and then you cut out the shape right on the line so you get your perfect shapes. And they go, oh, this is so hard, I'm so nervous. And it's like, no, kindergarten, you learned how to cut out on the line. First grade, you perfected it. You can do this. So, you spend a lot of time in preparation with the small pieces sometimes, Beth. So I understand that. And sometimes you can get a little bit too small with wool because it has thickness to it. But it's all fun to me.
Right. And I think, I was sitting there in the workshop and sitting with my friends, and we were just, once we got it all ironed down and the pieces traced out, and we were cutting all the little bits out. Well, then we were sitting and visiting, because you're right. It's kindergarten. You're cutting out small shapes and trying to keep track of them. That was the main thing, I think. But, it was nice, because we could just visit. We could just sit there and visit and share and talk, which is the other thing I like about stitching. It doesn't necessarily need to be solitary. That part was really fun, to just sit and visit with people.
Yeah, see, you guys are convincing me. My first impression when I saw that piece, Beth, my first impression was that the barrier to entry for wool applique is quite low. I want to try some needlework. I want to try some textile arts, if you want. And I just had the impression that to get involved with wool applique was pretty simple and didn't require a whole lot of gear and technique and all kinds of things. But then the end result of that is so nice. And then when you're able to embellish beyond that to whatever degree you want, it just seemed like there was a low barrier of entry and then extreme flexibility on the other end to go just as far as you want.
I think so.
So I was semi-right then.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I
But
like when I'm at least that much right.
Yeah. So what do you think of that? You don't need a whole lot of supplies. I mean, you need a good pair of scissors, I think, is the main thing.
Correct. What's nice about wool applique too is it's very portable. You don't have to have a sewing machine. You can take it with you no matter where you're at. If you have your pieces cut out, that makes it simpler yet. Put them in a Ziploc bag. You take them with you, or have them fused onto your background. It's just so portable, and it's one of those things. Once those elements are down on your background, you don't have to read directions anymore. You just get to set and stitch with and play with the thread and needle. So, it's just, that's what's nice about it. You don't have to have a sewing machine. You don't have to have rulers. You don't have cutting mats. You don't have to have so many things for everything. So it's kind of nice in that aspect.
All right. May have to give it a try.
I think you should, Gary.
Why not? Try everything else. So why not that? It's fun. Okay, the shop itself now, you were shut down, your what do you call them, Woolly Wednesdays. You were shut down at the beginning of the year for remodeling, so you did a lot of work in the shop?
Well, it wasn't remodeling by choice, because the day after Christmas, I got a call from the landlord that said, we got a problem.
Uh-oh.
And above the shop, he has a rental property, and there's a washer and dryer in the hallway. Well, December in Iowa, we had that frigid snowstorm and blizzard. Well, the water line broke. So I had 1,000 gallons of water dump into the middle of the shop from the ceiling.
Oh.
So we gutted the inside of the building. Didn't have to take on all the drywall, but all the product. We had dumpsters full of product we threw away. It wasn't a fun holiday. But we survived, and the Woolly Wednesday group, of course, couldn't come because we were shut down in doing our repairs, because we did have some drywall repair. We had to refinish the floors. We had to get all the moisture out of the ceilings and out of the... It was a mess. It was a mess. But it could have been worse. It could have been a fire. We could have lost it all. So there's always an upside. But the Woolly Wednesday group is a group of ladies that is open to anyone. We get together the second Wednesday of the month. If it continues to grow, we have had to do it 2 days a week on that week. A very diverse group. They come in from 10 o'clock to 4 o'clock, and they bring whatever they want to work on of their own projects, their UFOs, whatever. They have built some fabulous friendships, and it makes me realize that it's a therapy group. It's not a work group, because they have all bonded together, and now you see them going and doing things with people they hadn't met before. They learn from each other. I learn from them. I mean, you never quit learning in the stitching world, I don't think. So, it's just fun. As Beth had said before, you can sit with your friends and you can visit and you can keep working. It's just a fun time. So that was my remodel at that time.
That's what I get for asking questions to which I do not know the answer. Ouch, what an ugly time. Oh, that's tough. Yeah. Well, that's so cool about this. So you've actually had to add an extra day because you get so many people wanting to do the Woolly Wednesday?
Yeah, well, my space is really limited in the back. We can get 16 back there, but we're working elbow to elbow. And it depends on how many of them are rug hookers, how many of them are cross stitchers, how many are wool appliquing, how many are knitting. There's just a big diversity of what all's going on back there. So, so it's a little limited. If it gets too crowded, then we'll throw in an extra day and do it on Wednesday and Thursday. So
that's great to be able to do that and have that happen right in your own shop. Yeah, it's got to feel good.
It's wonderful.
Yeah. I got to see this rug hooking happening, because every time somebody says rug hooking, I remember that fad thing. Was it latch hook rug?
Yes, and they're not at all the same.
Yeah, and that's I gotta get on the YouTube, I guess, and see this done, because there's no way it's that because that whole thing where you bought those little 3-inch long pieces in balls of those whatever Yep.
Yeah. Well, if you can find old rugs in antique stores and stuff occasionally, my very first rug I made was in 2004, and it's on the landing of all my rugs are on my floors. A lot of people use them for art and decorate with them. Mine are all on the floor, and we walk on them every single day, and they still to this day look like the day I did them. There's wool just isn't going to break down. It's going to hold, it doesn't nap down, it doesn't fuzz up. It just is so dense and sturdy. I should say. I did a full-size, life-size fox on a rug one time, and my niece was over, and of course the tip of the tail of the fox was white, and she spilt red Kool-Aid on it. I was like, oh, I think I levitated when it happened. And, I went and got a damp towel, laid on it. It picked it right up. And I thought for sure it would show a stain mark eventually with wear and dust and stuff on the rug. And it has never, ever shown a sign of that red Kool-Aid ever being on there. And they just, they're so durable.
Yeah.
So it is a fun hobby. It's not a fast hobby. But you are building an heirloom when you do a rug out of wool.
Oh, now you got me really curious. And that's bad because I think I have but you put it don't you have to, it's like on a frame, correct?
Yeah. Yes, it's very tight. It has carding strips around the edge so you can tighten your background on really tight because you need it pretty tight while you're working on it. And you're taking different width strips and pulling them up from the back to the front to like building a nap, like a regular rug, purchased rug. It has a nap. The more expensive, the taller the nap is, and the softer it is. Your height of your hooks is kind of your signature. Everybody hooks differently. So some people hook real short. I'm what I call a high hooker. So I pull my loops high. So mine are a little bit softer and they don't have to be as dense because you want that loop to shape like a teardrop. And it just makes a soft rug, but they are very durable. They're fun to do. They're not fast to do, but they're fun. And it's like a color book page is where you start. And then you just start filling in with wool strips.
So in your inventory, Beth, there's a rug somewhere?
No, I don't have a rug. Someone gave me the frame. It looks kind of like a slat frame, except it has like little hooks on the ends. And I was like, someone gave it to me and I threw it in my basement with my Evertights. And I was cleaning that area out and I was like, Beth, get rid of this. You have no need for this. Put it in the sale box, whatever. And now I'm thinking, wait, maybe I ought to pull that back out again. To Williamsburg because she's not that far from me and learn how to do this. Now, is it like punch needle then?
It's the reverse of punch needle. On punch needle, you put your weaver's cloth on a frame that you can keep tight and you punch from the back side down and so your loops are on the bottom side. Rug hooking, you put your not weaver's cloth, your monk's cloth or your linen on the top with your design drawn on the top. And you put the hook through the background and then pull the loops to the top side. So it's essentially the same thing, but in reverse.
Interesting. And okay, so what do you use for the fabric? Is it linen?
It's called, for rug hooking, you use monk's cloth or linen. And it's, monk's cloth has a very even weave and there are little cotton strands that are woven together. So you have, if you think about cross stitch fabric, but it's larger scale. Mm-hmm. And linen, of course, is you can get even weave or you can get primitive linen, which sometimes the threads might have a slub in them or something, which doesn't matter because once you get all your wool strips punched or pulled in there, you don't see the background anyway. There's also rug warp, not a fan. Years and years ago, they always did it on burlap, but those many times are what you see in the antique stores, and the burlap is broken down because it doesn't have the longevity or the life of linen or monk's cloth. Now, you got to be careful because there are big box stores that say they're selling monk's cloth. It's not the same thing. So if you're going to think about it, be sure you get someone that really knows something about the rug hooking and they're not just selling you product that has the same name but really isn't the same.
Right. And how wide are your strips then?
Well, that varies. The fine hookers, they will, where they do a flower and there'll be shading and shadowing, they might have strips that are as small as 1/8 of an inch wide. And the primitive hookers are usually using strips that are anywhere from probably most of them I'd say would start at 1/4 inch up to 1/2 inch wide. And then if you hand tear it yourself, you can be wider than that.
Okay. Oh, so there are okay. Now I've got more questions.
That's okay.
Do you cut it with like a rotary cutter, the wool, or you said some people tear it, which I've never heard of tearing wool. I mean, I know how to tear cotton.
Well, if you tear your wool, it's going to stay on grain, which you kind of want to happen because then you don't get frizzy edges or, you don't have the fraying on the edges like you would if you cut it and you weren't on grain. But we have cutters. My favorite is what's called the Townsend cutter, or now it's called the Beeline Townsend cutter. There's a Fraser cutter. There's all different kinds of cutters to cut your wool strips. You can cut it with a rotary cutter and a ruler, but it is really a bit of a challenge because it's hard to hold your ruler steady on wool because it's real slippery, right, versus on cotton. On cotton it kind of lays flat, but wool, because of the density, it slides. And so to cut a 1/4 inch strip, the odds are you aren't going to be on grain and it's going to slide on you. But it could be done. Okay.
And so how much wool would you need to do? I don't know.
Yep. Any given area, like if you were going to hook something that was a square foot, okay, because I'm a high hooker, I always figure 6 square feet to fill that square foot for rug hooking.
Wow. So
it's 6 times the area. Some people, if they're a lower, you could probably get by with 4.5 to 5 times the space, but you can almost figure about 1/4 square inch.
Okay. And then is this wool, is it felted or not felted?
It is felted. Even the thicker weights that we bring in, we still felt it also. Just we want to be safe. So you do want to felt it, because now I can throw my rug in the washing machine. Now they wouldn't tell you to do that, and I probably wouldn't tell you to do it, but I have done that, thrown a rug in the washing machine and brought it out, laid it out flat, and it came out perfect.
See, again, I can see now why people don't put them on the floor. I mean, because besides the fact that they're beautiful, but you put that much material in it, yeah, no, it would be on the wall as a wall hanging. No, yeah, I can already say that. Oh no, I got a new hobby I'm in.
You need to come see me.
I love when that happens. Best, yeah, I can tell the questions. Yeah, best minds rolling here. Yep, good. We got to get the GoPro camera in your basement. I just keep having visions of the Smithsonian basement at the end of Indiana Jones. Yep.
Yeah, boxes. Yeah. Scary.
We got to get down there. So what, Annette, what lies ahead for the shop? We got classes coming up, new designs. What do you got on the near horizon here that people need to spend their money on?
Sure. This week I have 3 quilts cut out ready to put together, and I have a wool applique that is just about 3/4 stitched, and so that's going to be coming out. Of course, I got to get the patterns written. I'm implementing one. I think I want to start implementing some more, maybe an evening, a Saturday. That's hard for me to do. But maybe opening up some more class time to try to get more people involved in, give them the option to get in here and try some new things. Years ago, I used to do 5 shows a year that I would go vend at, but I'm getting older and lazier. So I typically would still have 2 the last couple years, but this year I only have 1. But I've, said, okay, I'll send out some more newsletter, get more product made. Just staying in front of people and just sharing the passion. That's what I want to do. I mean, I love what I do, and I love sharing it with people and hope they enjoy it as much as I do, because it's just a relaxing thing to do. Hopefully, I need to get better at social media. That's on my list of things to do better at.
Social media, one of the great time sucks of our time right there.
Oh,
Jeez.
That's an understatement.
Endless. Yep. All right. Annette, thanks so much. TheWoolenNeedle.com. All of that. TheWoolenNeedle.com is the website. It's easy to shop at. I speak from experience. Yeah, check it out. All kinds of things to expand your horizons with. Annette, thanks so much for doing this. We enjoyed it.
Thank you very much, Gary. Nice visiting, Beth.
And thanks to everyone for listening.